sends Kristaps Porzingis to Boston, Marcus Smart to Memphis, and Tyus Jones to Washington. Memphis is also sending a pair of first-round picks to Boston, which includes number 25 tonight. Washington gets a total of 3 players and the 35th overall pick from the Celtics. And so Windy is here, and Tim Legler is here, and Zach Lowe joins the conversation. But Windy, I can hear people that are just waking up right now, and they're saying, wait a minute, that's not what the trade was for Kristaps Porzingis. And they're right. That's not what the trade was. Then that one you think it was fell apart, and then this one happened. What happened?
Yeah, so the big thing here to realize is that at midnight last night, Kristaps Porzingis had a deadline to pick up the option in his contract. If he doesn't pick up the option in his contract, the Celtics can't trade for him, and the Wizards can't really trade him effectively. So there was that sort of ticking. When that first trade concept fell apart, there was an issue sort of maybe around Malcolm Brogdon, who was dealing with an elbow injury in the finals, or in the conference finals. It was like on the clock, got to go. And so the Grizzlies obviously had some conversations leading up to this. They had been interested in acquiring Marcus Smart, not only to fill in for Ja Morant's suspension, just because they wanted a veteran. And this ends up happening to beat the buzzer, so Porzingis would extend. It's still a huge acquisition for Boston, who not only gives Porzingis, who has had a spectacular time since he got traded to Washington, but they also get 2 first-round draft picks in this trade, including one tonight. So trading Marcus Smart was a big move for them, but they got back a haul. And at the end of this, Tyus Jones, he should not be forgotten in this deal. Tyus Jones is one of the best backup, if not the best backup guards in the NBA. He's probably a starter quality player. That's something that Washington now has going forward. So this trade has much bigger scope, much bigger names, and much bigger potential balance of power shift than the one that was set up earlier in the day.
But first and foremost, it feels like a buzzer-beating win for the Celtics. Zach Lowe, pick it up. How do you like it?
On paper, the Celtics got really good value for Marcus Smart, and they needed to shed one contract somewhere along the way, and they still do, actually, because of the CBA. Look, turning Marcus Smart into a guy who had an all-star caliber year last year at center in Porzingis and 2 first-round picks, that's great value for Marcus Smart. But I have some questions about how this fit is going to work with the Celtics. Number one, I think Marcus Smart is the best passer on a team that does not have a lot of great passers in Boston. That's one of the reasons their crunch time offense has melted down. Number two, I love the fit of Porzingis as a stretch center, a 3-point shooting center. He can post up a little bit, particularly when one of Tatum and Brown is on the bench. But can he play with Robert Williams if Robert Williams is healthy? He can probably play with Al Horford, but who's closing games for them? Those are all questions. How does he fit into their defensive scheme, which has been heavy on switches? They made themselves bigger, which they probably needed to do, but they have 3 guys now who are really centers in Horford, Robert Williams, and Porzingis. And I realize that this trade is a hedge against Al Horford's age and Robert Williams' injury, but I think the fit questions, and particularly the playmaking questions, are kind of interesting for Boston. And everyone else in this trade did pretty well, I thought. It was a very interesting trade.
All right, so Zach Lowe has questions about the Celtics. How about you, Tim Legler?
No, I love it for Boston. I just think that his fit is going to be pretty good with Tatum and Brown because his pick and pop game is going to be very dangerous. This is one of the best long-range shooting big men this league has seen. But he's also a guy that you can run your offense through. If Brown or Tatum isn't playing, they're in foul trouble, or they're just taking a night off, or they're out for rest, you now have a guy that you can give the basketball to in some mid-post areas. And he's a very good turnaround jump shooter. Now, he's not a guy that you can give it to and go create off the dribble or get deep low post position. But in certain areas of the floor, you can run your offense through him for 5-6 minutes at a time, and he can deliver. He's in his mid-20s. He is just entering the prime years of his career coming up over the next 5-6 years. Now, he's had major health issues in the past as well, but he just played 65 games. And look, by today's standards, 65 is like 82. That's what we expect guys to play now. 65, nobody plays more than 70. That's all you're going to get. He was able to be out there for an entire year and have the best year of his career. So his ability to stretch the floor, playing off of Tatum and Brown, is going to be huge. And I also love the fact that he's a backline defender. So you don't lose that much. If Robert Williams is off the court, you still have a guy that's an elite level rim protector. And he can track guys pretty well off ball screen all the way to the rim because of his length. So I just think it gives them another weapon. Much better offensively now. And I think defensively, you don't lose a ton. I know Marcus Smart was the glue of that team on the perimeter defensively. He took a lot of charges. But Porzingis certainly has value on that end of the floor as well. So I love it. I think this gives Boston some juice going into the summer when they had to be very disappointed how their season ended.
Absolutely. I mean, they got knocked out in a Game 7, that the kind of thing that you sort of live with for a very long time. We'll see if this Porzingis trade winds up changing things. I did want to get one other thing in with Windy, because when I went to sleep last night, the Clippers were involved in this trade. And we've heard about Malcolm Brogdon going there. We've heard about Chris Paul going there. There are a lot of questions with the Clippers. What do the fans need to know?
Yeah, so I think there's two things going on with the Clippers. They obviously are looking to upgrade their backcourt. That's why they had discussions with Malcolm Brogdon, and those discussions could end up restarting also with Chris Paul. But one of the things I think is important to keep an eye on, both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have contract extension situations this offseason. They're both going into the last year of their contract. And are the Clippers going to extend those guys? Because in today's day and age, if you have a star player going into the last year of his contract, you extend him. And if you don't extend him, typically if the player doesn't sign, it's an indication that long-term there's going to be an issue. And in the recent days, Paul George's name has popped up in some places that he might be available, specifically in regards to the number 3 pick in the draft. Now, I don't think the Clippers are actively looking to do this, but I do think where the Clippers are right now needs to get more attention in the league. Whether or not they're obviously going to go out and try to trade for a player like Chris Paul, and whether or not they're going to, this offseason, reinvest in the future of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard together when that hasn't borne fruit and they continue to have injury problems. That is one of the big storylines that we're going to see once free agency period.
Number 3 for Paul George. I think that's a non-starter for them. I think what's really happening with Paul George's name started to rumble out there is the Clippers, I think internally, have decided if these guys walk in the door and ask for 4-year, ironclad, fully guaranteed max extensions, we're not just going to roll over and give those deals to them. They do not play enough. We are prepared to actually negotiate with them on things like, hey, Paul, would you do a 2+1, a 2+ partial guarantee? And I think that noise getting around the league is why we're starting to see these questions rise, because you never know if a team takes that kind of position, if they really do it in the end when those guys walk in the door, what the impact of that is. I wouldn't expect any trade tonight, certainly not with Portland, but I do think those extensions and how the Clippers handle them, and if they really are going to have that kind of backbone, is a big looming issue over the next couple of months.
All right, so keep an eye on Paul George, keep an eye on Kawhi Leonard, keep an eye on the Clippers. Meanwhile, tonight, all eyes will be on the draft, 8 Eastern on ESPN and ABC. And, of course, that man will be at the center of all of it, literally and figuratively, the 7'5" Frenchman Victor Wembanyama, who will be the first pick tonight to San Antonio. Then Woj says that Michael Jordan, the outgoing owner in Charlotte, will have the final say on the number 2 pick, and the expectation is they will take Alabama's Brandon Miller, and then we would get to number 3, and that's where Portland is widely expected to take Scoot Henderson, who people love. He's coming from the G League. He would be the likely pick there, and that will set up a fascinating dynamic with Damian Lillard's future. And so in the interest of moving it along, I will point out, and Wendy has been saying this all week long, that if Damian Lillard sees the Trailblazers take the young player tonight, there is a very good chance that Damian Lillard winds up finally coming to the conclusion that he wants to be dealt out of Portland. We've talked about that all week long. So let's talk about where it might go here, Legs. Where could you see this going if Lillard finally decides the time has come? I will look forward to my statue in Portland someday, but I need to go someplace I have a chance to win while I'm still young enough to do it. Where do you want to see it happen?
Well, I think the 2 teams that come to mind are in the East. Philly and Miami would be the 2 teams that you would look at and say they've got enough other things in place that Damian Lillard coming in immediately elevates you to a team that could win a title. I mean, Miami got to the finals a year ago with a roster that didn't really deserve to be there because of all the issues that some of these teams in the East have had, whether it's injuries or chemistry or lack of depth or guys not playing well under pressure. Damian Lillard answers all of those things. So, look, he's a guy that has been in Portland. He has said he's not going to chase anything. He's comfortable in his own skin. He's not going to have the conversation and narrative around what he needs to accomplish to validate his career, influence him in any way. But at some point, you wonder, does Damian Lillard get tired of watching postseasons where his peers and guys that are on his level have an opportunity to play deep into the postseason and an opportunity to win championships. You wonder, when does that finally come to fruition, that he ends up somewhere else? But those are two places certainly that have enough other things in place already that they need somebody like Damian Lillard, in Miami's case, to give them that additional offensive punch, and in Philly's case, a guy that can play through pressure situations and deliver when you need to.
What do you think, Zach?
Miami is a no-brainer. They've telegraphed it. They backed out of the Bradley Beal sweepstakes because of Damian Lillard's looming availability. Not just Dame, but there's always guys coming down the pike that Miami will chase. Philly's interesting. I just don't know that they have enough to get him unless they include Tyrese Maxey, and that's a big risk for them. Maxey is a big game player. He's a stud. The team legs didn't mention, I think, is Brooklyn, who has Mikal Bridges, a guy that Dame has name-checked as someone that he wants to play with, a whole boatload of extra picks from Phoenix that look a little more valuable the more all-in Phoenix gets for today. The question for Brooklyn is that the guy at age 32, almost 33, that we want to cash our chips in for? How many chips do we have to cash in? Can we get him for a price that's sort of in the middle? We have enough stuff left over to get a third star. So those are the three teams I'd be looking at. But let's see what happens tonight. Portland has been telling people all week, we're not taking calls on the third pick. We don't like your offers. If you want the third pick, you're going to have to bowl us over. We don't like any of these guys. We don't think they're worth a potentially generationally great player at number 3, with maybe one exception, and that's Zion Williamson. And we don't really know if that's a realistic proposal. Can they make the pick and convince Dame, look, I know you preferred, we probably traded it for a veteran. We didn't, we couldn't. Give us time, give us till the trade deadline, give us a couple more months to reshape the team. Is that realistic for them? That's what they're telegraphing. Is it posturing? Is it a negotiation tactic? We're going to find out in 11 hours.
Final thought, Wendy.
Yeah, I think there's two things. One, is possible what Zach said. Could the Blazers come to Dame and say, hey, let's give this a try. Let's watch Scoot Henderson in Summer League. Maybe you might be really excited about him. Two, if that doesn't work, if Dame sticks with what he said at the end of the regular season, he doesn't want a youth movement, will Dame get to choose, or will the Blazers get to choose? Because his status with the organization is such that maybe he might say, I want to go to this team, make a deal with this team, or will the Blazers say, we got to make the best deal possible? Those are two things to watch over the next 3 to 5, 8 days.
All right, look, the offseason, I've always said, it's as good a time as the NBA has. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.